Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Emily Howard and today we're going to be starting the first section in Chapter 3 titled Solving Two-Step Equations. Today's lesson, as stated before, we're going to be solving two-step equations and we're going to build off of what we've been learning, which is solving one-step equations. But first we're going to do a checkpoint review, and the first problem we're going to solve for x. So we're just going to be doing what we've been learning, which is doing one step. So if you solve for x, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to subtract 3 from both sides. And if we simplify this, you're going to end up with x equals 34. We have solved for x, so this is our answer. Alright, but now we're going to take it a step further and we're going to add one more step to what we've already learned. So for example 1, again we're going to solve for x, and our equation in this example is x over 2 minus 8 equals 12. Now normally what we would try to do is we would want to get x by itself. Well, in this case there is an x term, and so we're going to treat it for step 1 just like we've been doing. We're going to try to get the x term, which in this case is x over 2, by itself, and we're going to do this by subtracting 8 from adding 8 to both sides. So that's step 1. If we simplify this, you're going to get x over 2 equals 20. Now, this is where step 2 comes in. Since we have x over 2 equals 20, our x term has the operation of division still attached to it, and we need to get x just by itself. And so in order to do that, we need to perform the opposite operation. So if we're dividing by 2, the opposite of division is multiplication. And so we're going to multiply both sides of the equal sign by 2. And so we do this. 2 times x over 2, the 2's will cancel to create just x, and you're going to multiply 20 by 2 as well. And so if we simplify this, then you're going to get x equals 40, which is our answer. And so we have two steps where we added 8 to both sides of the equation to get the x term, which is x over 2 by itself on one side, and then we had to perform another operation, the opposite of division, which is multiplication, to finally get x by itself for our final answer. Sound easy enough? Alright. So then we're going to do it again. This is example 2, and in this case we're going to solve for m. And our equation this time is 21 equals negative m plus 7. Alright, so first step again, we want to get the m term by itself. In this case our first step was going to be subtracting 7 from both sides, as seen here. If we simplify this, we're going to get 14 equals negative m. Now anytime you have a solution for any type of equation, you always want to have the variable be positive number or a positive value. In this case, m is actually negative. Now if you remember, anytime we have a variable, there's always an invisible 1 in front of it. And we don't have to write 1 every time because 1 times any number is just the number itself. But in this case, with a negative number, a negative in front of the m, we're going to assume that there's a negative 1 there. So if it's actually saying negative 1 times m, we will have to perform the opposite operation, which in this case, if we're dealing with multiplication, the opposite is division. We need to divide both sides by negative 1, as seen here. So step 2 is divide by negative 1. If we simplify this then, we're going to have negative 14 equals m, which is our final answer. So we've had, again, the two steps there where we subtracted 7 and then divided by negative 1. And we're left with a positive variable and our answer. So the next we're going to do for example 3 is we're going to start learning about actually writing the equations and then solving for the variables. Okay? So our first example is a real-world problem-solving problem. And it says, a music store sells a copy of a deluxe electric guitar for $295. This is $30 more than 1/3 the cost of a deluxe electric guitar it is modeled after. What is the cost of the deluxe electric guitar? Now that's a lot of jibber-jabber. So what we need to do is we need to look at what values it gives us and then what we're actually solving for. In this case, the main question that we need to solve for is what is the cost of the deluxe electric guitar? So how do we do that? Well, first we're going to relate what it gives us. And what it gives us is this. We know that the cost of the copy is $30 more than 1/3 the cost of the deluxe electric guitar. Okay, so we know that. That's what we got from the second sentence. So now what we do is we define our variables. In this case, we're going to let C, which is the cost of the deluxe electric guitar, be C. So we've defined our variable. That's what we're going to try to find for. But now we can also plug in the values we already know to write an expression, or an equation in this case. So we know that the cost of the copy from the problem is $295. Is just another word for equals. $30 is 30 in the expression here. More than is a expression for addition, so we're going to add 1/3 the cost of the deluxe electric guitar, which we know equals C. So we have our function here, 295 equals 30 plus 1/3 times C. So this is what we're going to be using to solve for what is the cost of the deluxe electric guitar. So now that we have an equation, we can just do what we've been learning, which is solving two-step equations. And so if we want to start here, we want to try to get the term with the C in it by itself. And we're going to do that by subtracting 30 from both sides. That's going to be our first step. So then we're going to simplify. And if you subtract 30 from both sides, you have 265 equals 1/3 times C. All right. Now what are we going to do? Well, the next step is to get C all by itself. Now, normally, what this is saying is that 1/3 times C. So technically it's using multiplications. But if you remember, when we're dealing with fractions, you can actually multiply by the reciprocal. And in this case, the reciprocal of 1/3, just flip the fraction and it becomes 3. So we're going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal, which in this case is 3. So you're going to have 3 times 265 equals 1/3 of C times 3. The 1/3 and the 3 cancels on the right-hand side. And if we simplify this, we have 795 equals C. Now, that's a pretty big number. And does this make sense to everyone? Well, let's check. So we have our answer. In this case, we found it to be C equals 795. And remember, C is the cost of the deluxe electric guitar. So if we go ahead and plug this value into our equation here, we have $295 is $30 more than 1/3 of, now that we know what C is, which is $795. Okay, so we're going to plug this into our now equation. And so we have 295 equals 30 plus 1/3 of 795. And so if we plug this into our calculators, 1/3 times 795 equals 265, which we see here. So now we have 295 equals 30 plus 265. If you add 30 and 265, you get, oh, look at that, 295 equals 295. They are equal to each other, therefore our answer does in fact make sense. The cost of the deluxe electric guitar is $795. So we're going to do one more problem, which is very similar. And in this case, we're going to write a function that is going to work for any type of problem we're trying to figure out in this case, for this example problem. So the question reads, in a catalog, tulips cost 75 cents each, and shipping costs are $3. Write a rule that describes the amount spent as a function of the number of bulbs ordered. Then determine the greatest number of bulbs you can order for $14. Now this is a two-part question, and so we first have to write a function, and then we have to determine the greatest number of bulbs you can order for $14. So let's start with the function we have to write. We need to write a rule that describes the amount spent as a function of the number of bulbs ordered. So if we look at this, we're going to do just like how we did the last problem. We're going to relate it. What can we pull out that we understand? Okay, the amount spent equals the cost per tulip bulb times the number of tulip bulbs plus shipping. Now this makes sense because we know that the cost per tulip bulb, which is 75 cents, we're going to multiply that by the number of tulip bulbs we're going to purchase because each of them costs 75 cents each. And then you're going to add shipping, which is a plus $3, which we see here if we, well, first we have to define variables. I'm sorry. Let us define these variables. We're going to let A equal the amount spent, and then B is going to equal the number of bulbs you can order. Okay? And so if we write it out, kind of get a little ahead of myself there, sorry about that. A, which is the amount spent, equals, pretty straightforward, 0.75, which is the cost per bulb, times the number of tulip bulbs that we're going to buy, which we have defined as B, plus shipping, which we know is $3. So this is our function we're going to work with. And we've written that. So part 1 is technically done. And this is our function. Okay, so part 1, we need to write a function for the story problem, which we just did. A, the amount spent, equals 0.75 times B plus 3. That's our function. Now part 2 asks us to figure out the greatest number of bulbs we can order for $14. Now, 14 is our total cost or amount spent, so we can plug that value in for A. So in this case, A is going to equal $14. If we plug this value into our equation now, 14, which is the amount spent, equals 0.75 B plus 3, we now have to solve for B, which is again, our number of tulip bulbs we can buy. So we want to get the B value by itself. This is what we've been working on. The B term by itself. We would accomplish this by subtracting 3 from both sides. If we simplify this, we find 11 equals 0.75 B. If we try to get B by itself, just the B term, we're going to perform the opposite operation, which in this case, if B is being multiplied by 0.75, you then perform the opposite of multiplication, which is division. So we're going to divide both sides by 0.75, as seen here, which is step 2. If we simplify this, then we have B equals 14.667. Now, you can't just leave it like this, because there can't be any half bulbs or 2/3 bulbs. You always have to buy whole bulbs. And so in this case, since you cannot buy 15 whole bulbs, you have to round down, and you can only buy 14. So in this case, our final answer for how many bulbs we can buy, or the greatest number of bulbs we can order with $14, is going to be 14 bulbs, or B equals 14. So we have completed both parts of this example. Part 1 was writing the function for the story problem, A equals 0.75 B plus 3, and then we solved for how many bulbs we could order for $14, which we found to be 14. Okay, so we've covered solving two-steps equations where we're given the function and we have to solve for a variable using 2 steps, and we've also covered on how to write a function from a story problem and then solve for any given variable, or to use values that were given and to plug those into the functions to solve for them. So do we have any questions? Alright, seeing none, I want to say thank you very much for listening. And then I would just like to say that for your homework for Chapter 3, Section 1 will be found on page 122 of your textbook. You're going to do 1 through 20, multiples of 3. So you're going to do like 1, 3, 6, 9, and so on through 20, 21 through 23, 28 through 39, and this will all be due on Tuesday. And I hope you have a great day, everyone. Make sure you copy this down and get that turned in, because we don't accept late work. Thank you, and have a great day.